Shalom, shalom. It's a delight to be here today with Rabbi Jack Moline, who served for many years as a synagogue rabbi, head of nonprofits, an author, an educator, has been very involved politically and on many moral causes, nationally and globally. So thank you for taking time to talk.
Oh, it's such a pleasure to be here, Shmuly.
So there is a lot of despair in the world in general, and certainly right now, given a number of things happening in the world. And I wonder if we could talk about hope a little bit. How would you define hope, and what would you say is kind of the nature of hope?
Good. Well, it's an important question. Much of what I think about when I think about hope is governed by a book that was written by Dr. Alan Middleman of the Jewish Theological Seminary. It's called Hope in a Democratic Age. And he goes through a whole history of hope among philosophers. But what was really important for me was that he understands hope to be a value rather than an emotion. Generally, when we think of hope, we think of making a wish and wishing it would come true.
Yeah.
But hope is really an expectation. It's a value. It is something that is morally commendable, excellent, and commendable.
Meaning a virtuous person would cultivate hope.
And in Jewish tradition, Dr. Middleman and I, as his student, believe that hope is a Jewish virtue. It is something that must be in the Jewish soul. And that is to distinguish it, for example, from faith. Faith is the belief that things are going to be better. And that's a personal conviction. Hope as a virtue is an expectation that things will get better. And that is a partnership with whatever forces in the universe, and I would call them God, are partners in making the world a better place.
So why is this important today?
Well, we all live in the world right now, and there is certainly enough of a mess going on, and not just politically and not just militarily, but there's a genuine feeling that things are not as good as they used to be. There would be no need for slogans with the word "again" in them if we thought that things were on the right path going forward. Having hope, having the expectation that things will be better, that things will improve, that our lot will of necessity take us to a better place, is, I think, the necessary motivation to be partners with each other and with the Kadosh Baruch Hu to make sure that things are happening that way.
Yeah. So I wonder if you could demonstrate for us how hope is a Jewish value.
Sure. Fortunately, as a congregational rabbi, I have a backlog of sermons I can draw on. And not too many years ago, and actually before whatever political upheaval we are dealing with these days took place, I actually talked about this on Rosh Hashanah. And I brought three texts that I knew everybody would be familiar with. The first was Psalm 27, which we recite during the high holiday period. The verse at the end is Kavel Adonai, Chazak v'yametz libecha v'kavel Adonai. Hope in the Lord, be strong and of good courage, hope in the Lord. And it comes after probably the most devastating thing that you could imagine happening to you. If my father and mother were to abandon me, God would uphold me. That is an expectation that things will be better. And so first of all, we have to be willing to expect that we will have the assistance we need in making things better. And we say that through the toughest period of time for our souls in the Jewish year as well. Secondly is Aleinu, which a lot of people don't hear Psalm 27 because they don't come to shul early enough. But everybody hears Aleinu because everybody's there at the end.
Yeah.
And after we get done talking about how fortunate we are to be in relationship with God, the first thing we say is Al Kei Nekaveh. Therefore we hope. We have hopes for the world and hopes that we're going to act on because we expect that it will be a better place where, by whatever name people call on their higher power, we will all come together in service of the same values. And the third is a modern and very secular piece of expectation. It's from Hatikva, which is itself the hope. The image is drawn from Ezekiel in the Valley of the Dry Bones. Can these bones live again, is what Ezekiel wants to know. Because they've dried up, the Avdat Tikva, and they've lost hope. Od lo avda tikvatenu, we have not yet lost our hope. That is an expression that we know, we expect that the world will be a better place for ourselves as Jews, because it is the national anthem of our people, and for the world. Mm-hmm. So everywhere you turn in our tradition, whether you're looking in the Bible at Psalms, whether you're looking in the liturgy, or whether you're looking in the realm of the state of Israel, hope is an expectation.
So I mostly hear you talking about hope within the collective. How would you think about hope for the individual?
So, look, I'll share something personal if it's all right. We were just talking about this before we came on the air here. Our family suffered a tragedy about a year and a half ago. My beloved grandson, Oliver, died at the age of 4 months after heart surgery. Completely unexpected. He was supposed to come through with flying colors. And that happened on October 5th. And then, of course, on October 7th was the tragedy in Israel. It was a very, very difficult time for us. And as Oliver was struggling with the aftermath of the surgery, I used to tell people, I still tell people, that I found myself praying words I didn't believe to the kind of God I didn't believe in. Mm-hmm. But I didn't think there was going to be a divine intervention that was going to save his life. He was too far gone, and certainly there was nothing to do in the south of Israel after the Hamas attack had taken place. But I could not abandon the notion that things had to get better. I had that hope. And in spite of the loss, in spite of the depression, I was committed to doing my part, to making sure that we had a better world. And I think that's, if you cultivate this hope collectively, as we've learned in all sorts of mitzvah doing in our tradition, if you cultivate it collectively, when it's time for you to act individually, the foundation is there and the values have embedded themselves.
Wow. So one thing I see happening on the progressive left is that you're deemed almost more authentic, more committed, the worse you make things sound, right? You think we have 20 years on climate change, we have 2. You think democracy is at risk, democracy is dead. You think Israeli-Palestinian peace process is, so far off, I think there's 0 chance. And I wonder what your response is to that, and what it means to both be realistic about the challenges, but also be a person of hope, and how do you still be heard within that discourse of doom?
The discourse of doom, that's a great phrase. I don't know what the answer to that part of it is. I can't make anybody else listen to me. Right. Most importantly is I have to listen to myself. Is the message that I'm articulating one that is making me want to make the world a better place? If we've got 2 years left on climate change, man, my mortgage won't even be paid off by then. Right. All right, and if there's no expectation that Israelis and Palestinians will ever come together, why bother? Right. If you're bothered enough to complain about it, then you ought to be bothered enough to do something about it, and to not try to discourage people in the process. I met with the board of a group that I sit on that is brings together Jewish and Black teenagers. It's called Operation Understanding DC. And they learn about each other's communities and cultures and attend each other's houses of worship and stuff like that. And there was some bad behavior on the part of a couple of the white kids, which means that they were the Jewish kids in this case. Mm-hmm. And the person who was reporting to the board on this said, and I told them, that it was troublesome to the people who were hearing it, and that it was bothersome, and that it was an extension of white supremacy. And I sort of jumped up in my seat. And I said afterwards, if you tell somebody that they're practicing white supremacy, you've only reinforced what they're doing, because they're going to be too embarrassed to address it, and they're going to consider themselves part of the problem rather than part of the solution. So we all need to dial it back a little bit, and to call out the people in our own communities who are doing this. It's very easy to criticize the other guy. Right. It's your partners in the dialogue of doom that you have to you have to pull back.
Right. So a lot of trust has broken in American society.
Yep.
Trust in media, trust in democracy, trust in scientific experts, medical experts, trust in clergy. And that's intentional to, authoritarian styles to just trust me. And so what's the relationship between trust and hope? Like when there is no foundation to kind of hold us or to trust in, how do we rebuild that trust? Because that feels an important part of the project of cultivating hope as well.
Yeah, I don't want to sound too religious here, even though we are rabbis.
Yeah.
But unless the Lord builds a house, the builders labor in vain. So there has to be something that is external rather than internal that will shore up the foundations of the things that are falling apart. I think one of the things we've discovered, and this very platform that we're on, social media, is part of the problem, is that if you can deconstruct everything, there is no construction for anything. And finding that which is of perpetual, if not eternal value in our lives is what's necessary in order to sink a foundation on which the houses that we want to build will stand. Will people fail us? Of course they will. This is not the first time in history that we've had scoundrels in American government. And I won't name them, but they're on both sides of the aisle. And it is not the first time that we have been disillusioned by the institutions that were supposed to make our lives better, to provide for the common defense and promote the general welfare. But we always relied on something deeper. And finding what that deeper is for you and sharing it with others is what gives us the opportunity to work together.
So last question, if you can just share with folks just some words of hope. I know many people, as I'm sure you do as well, who just feel very deflated by rising anti-Semitism, by rising anti-Israel sentiment, by threats to minorities in America, just the state of the world. And I wonder if you can speak just concretely to people how they might be more hopeful right now.
So before I say what I'm going to say, I want to make clear that I'm not asking people to ignore any of those things. They're all very real. I feel them as well. My wife and I, being the age we are, we used to watch the news every night. Now we talk about it every day. Do we really want to know what we're looking at? You can't forget about that stuff. But at the same time, all the things that brought us joy in our personal lives and our public lives are still present. They may be obscured by all the yelling and all the criticism that's being leveled everywhere. But all those moments of joy are still there. I find so much of my joy in the tradition. People find it in other places as well, in their activism, in music, in art, in their children and grandchildren, wherever it happens to be. Don't overlook the positives in life for the sake of what's wrong and needs to be fixed.
Yeah, I love it. Beautiful. Friends, check out Rabbi Jack Moline's recent books, including Different Chapters, Same Verse, Volume 1 and Volume 2 now available. Thank you so much.
On Amazon.
On Amazon.